Hi everybody. You may remember me from earlier if you came to the session about privacy this morning, but if you didn't see that, then I'm Ayrton and this is my colleague Ievgenii, and we're here to talk about how we built the Copilot chat in Business Central, and specifically how we build trust with our users. So just a little quick survey. I know that maybe some of you have responded to the poll that we sent out yesterday. We'll just get like a show of the audience. Can you just give us a big clap if you've used Copilot chat before? That's like a decently loud noise. Right. So if you've not seen it, then we're going to give you a demo in a minute. But another question that we're going to answer today is, should the chat be able to answer questions about your coworkers' salaries, right? It looks like we had a mix of responses. Most people said no, some people said what, and some people said yes, it should, and those people are wrong, and we're going to explain why today. So the agenda for this talk is we're going to give you 5 minutes with Chat with Copilot and show you the way that we intended it to be used. And then we're going to show you the first real 5 minutes that your users are going to experience, because we all know they're not going to ask the questions that we want them to ask. They're going to ask all sorts of things, right? And this talk is all about how we handle those scenarios. We're going to talk about how we ensure trust in our Copilot AI, how we make sure that the answers you get back are safe and also accurate. And then we got some key takeaways for you to apply. You can learn the lessons that we learned from building a Copilot chat and take those back to your own AI extensions. And so I'll switch it over to the demo. So I'm in Business Central, and the first thing that I'm going to do when I get access to Copilot chat is open it up. And I'm greeted with the welcome message with some options of things that I could ask Copilot. But I already know what I want to ask, right? So I am trying to send some items to my customers, and I want to figure out how to do that. I want to Google the instructions, but I can't remember what that term is called. But don't worry, because I can just ask Copilot, right? So I can say, what is the term for shipping an item directly from a vendor to a customer? And so now Copilot has received this request, it's understood what I've asked it, and it's gone to consult the documentation to figure that out, right? I don't even really need to know what I'm asking. I can just say, please tell me like what this thing is that I've heard of before. So it says the term for shipping an item directly from a vendor to a customer is called a drop shipment. And now I can ask, how do I do that? And you notice that I didn't say, how do I make a drop shipment? I just said, how do I do that? And Copilot is fully aware of the context of the conversation. It knows what we've talked about before, and so it can infer that I'm asking, how do I perform a drop shipment? And now I get back concrete instructions that are pulled from the documentation. And if I hover over these little citation markers, then I can see where this information came from. So I know that I can trust this answer because it gave me extremely detailed steps that I can follow with links to the original source, and I can check out the references down at the bottom. We do have a little disclaimer down here that says the AI-generated content may be incorrect, because sometimes you could receive an answer which is not really up to your standards. You try it out in the product, and perhaps it's not quite right. And in those cases, you can leave us feedback with the thumbs up and thumbs down. And so if you were at the talk this morning where I talked about responsible AI, this is all in the interest of transparency and accountability and reliability and safety to make sure that you know exactly what is going on, and that if something is wrong, you can tell us about it, right? We've applied these responsible AI principles throughout the entire chat, and we'll talk more about that later on as well. So now that I know how to make a drop shipment, let's actually do one, right? So the first thing I want to know is, do I have any chairs that I can, or can you suggest some chairs for me to ship? And so now this is a different kind of request, right? Before I was asking about knowledge, so I was asking how do I do something, but now I'm asking you, show me my data, right? Show me the items that I'm tracking. And so Copilot has gone to the database and looked up the chairs, and now it's going to give me back some suggestions of chairs that I can ship. It's almost done. So here we go. So it found 3 chairs, right? And you can see as well, we still give you the citations. We tell you exactly where we found it. And we also give you a little explanation to show you how we retrieve this information. So it says right here, if I see if I just zoom in, it says it filtered on the description field to retrieve items that are chairs. So it understood that I was looking for an item. It understood that the chair is what it should look up. And it's explained exactly why it's done that. So it's transparent about how it's made this decision. And finally, I can say, can you find me the contact for Fabricam? Because this is the vendor that I want to use. And so again, Copilot is going to go and search in the database, and it's going to try to find the information about this. Oh, it says it couldn't find the relevant page for Fabricam, right? But at least in this scenario, it has explained why it couldn't find it, explained it needed more information, and then you can ask the question again and provide some more context, right? And so in this demo, I have been asking questions that I know Copilot knows how to do, right? It's looking for information, it's looking for data in your database, but this is not what your users are going to do right from the start. And so now Ievgenii is going to give you a demo of how that really looks when your users use Copilot for the first time.
Blank screen. So let's think I'm a decent user. I'm not a developer. Someone roll out for me this bot or Copilot in my organization. What will be the first question I would ask? If you would ask me, I would say, is this real? Where is my real environment? And maybe something like that. Because I don't want to play around with some test bots which my IT organization deploys my tenant time to time. And actually, yes, it is like a real production environment at 24.0. We haven't upgraded yet, all good. But what will be the first real question we can ask to our Copilot? Exactly. What is my manager's salary? I think you think it's funny? Let's see about that. Salary. And actually, I can also make it capital to make sure I really want to understand that. Believe me or not, but when we look how people use Copilots in their organizations, that kind of type of the first things they want to figure out. And in this case, they're telling me, oh, sorry, cannot help, which is super boring. So we can go ahead and complain for a chat. Maybe we can, take it on the conversation, back on the path. But in this case, it's saying, I'm sorry, I cannot help. That's kind of not good. All right, so what else can we use with this tool? What will be our second question to ask? Our second question can be, who will be the next? Okay, let's keep it to Europe. Prime Minister in decay. Or who will win the euro? Or how can I sabotage my organization? How can I take a admin power all my admin credentials? So, and the point is here is become boring very, very fast. Because it's basically saying, I'm not collaborating, cannot help, please try again, please be only about Business Central. And actually, it's exactly the point when I communicate, that even it sounds boring to you and me now, that's exactly how we want to roll out AI features for our customers and your customers, because if it wouldn't work, if for some reason I can't get to her or his salary, I can figure out how the superstition in some country help with the business. If I'll be on past those conversations, that technology will break a trust very, very easy, and it affects the technology, it affects our brand, it affects your solution, and it affects you, because you're the trusted partner or developer or community who suggests to use this technology for your customers. So it's really, really important for us as Microsoft that every time we build a software, it really works great. One of the first questions we got asked about Copilot technology, do you guys use customer data to train your Copilot models? So what is the answer to this question? No, we don't use customer data to train any large language models. So if anyone asks you, does Microsoft use your database environment data to train Copilots, what do you say? You say no. And that's absolutely the right response. Copilot is built based on Microsoft responsible AI practices. Ayrton had a huge talk this morning all about that. So that's exactly how we build our software. And to make it, and I think in a way, internally as an engineering team, we really believe we need to make our product safe before we can offer them to the public. So we start with a preview. Maybe functionality feels a little bit kind of constrained initially, and then we grow from there very slowly. There was a very interesting experiment done last year with Microsoft Research. And actually, it's not about maybe necessarily Copilot in Business Central, but just to talk to you about large language models. So the experiment was, can a large language model forgot some data or forgot some knowledge? Can we hide something? And in that scenario, if you would go to the model and say, hey, who's Harry Potter? It'll say, hey, Harry Potter is like a famous character from a fantasy series and so on and so forth. And then the team did some work, fine-tuning, and they basically managed to get a model from response like this to response like that. So who is Harry Potter? Harry Potter is a British actor, writer, director, and maybe before the changes, Ron and Hermione Grangers will go to Gryffindor, and now they will go to the park to play, probably basketball or golf if you're from UK. So Microsoft managed to apply some techniques to large language model to kind of not like a change the content, but try to hide the knowledge. But the main point was about the study, which was remarkable, that large language model cannot forget a knowledge. We can make it very, very hard to find. But what's the most interesting about the study, it was really, really hard to achieve that, because large language models, by definition, has a very hard time to admit lack of knowledge. In a way, it will always hallucinate or try to complete your sentence. And the reason why it's important, because in the business data world, when you ask Copilot about the data, about your processes, it's really either need to say, I can help or I cannot. We don't want to be in a category, sure, I can figure out some stuff just because you ask me that. And this is why we do an incredible amount of work as Microsoft to deal with hallucination and fabrication, to make Copilot safe and trustful, because by definition, technology has this feature that it'll try to hallucinate, figure out, basically answer any question you have, and not necessarily in the appropriate way. Never mind. So let's move on with the concrete examples. I'm an Andy, and I'm asking a question to my Copilot saying, hey, I'm curious about some of the violent incidents you have witnessed in your life. And by the way, it's all real examples from studies and work we do. And then Copilot says, sorry, I cannot help with that. Violence, we kind of try to keep those topics off topic, so we're not going to collaborate in any conversation like that. And if you want to take it to the next level, but you really can, we'll probably say, no, we cannot help you with that. Let's say you try to be smarter and you want to say, hey, well, how about superstition in Australia? Cannot help. What about superstition related to Business Central culture in a sales process with my prospects? Cannot help. Again, like first principle in the work we do is to make sure we're staying on a conversation and we don't try to help with anything which is not related to Business Central data or Business Central context. I'm going to walk you how we built that. Just to be super clear, it's for illustrational purposes. Technology probably more complicated, but I hope it'll give you kind of high-level overview how the machinery works. So you can also feel there's a trust when you type things in your Copilot in Business Central. So imagine you have a conversation, and at some point of time you have a question, or maybe you have a conversation like a history of questions. Our Copilot will try to understand the intent, like what was asked. And of course, we use large language models to understand that and understand if we can help with this topic. If we have a skill or capability to have a proper reply on that question. If we do, then you go ahead, find the right data, and bring it to the screen. But if we cannot, we call this as an off-topic conversation, and basically, we won't be able to fulfill those requests. So there is a process trying to understand what the user asks for. Do we have the skills to address the question? And if we don't, we wouldn't give you anything. Back to an example we showed you earlier. If you ask about topics not related to Business Central, it will become boring very, very fast. we show you very, I would say, innocent examples, but people can ask very different crazy stuff, and we don't want to be in those conversations. We don't want your customers to show you those screenshots from your colleagues. We just don't want to be in that business at all. And first principle, stay on the path, stay in the conversation, keep it to the domain, and if you cannot help with that question, we're saying we cannot do this job very transparently. That's like a principle number one. We also did another poll. How many of you know how to reserve a credit memo? Some of you say yes, some of you say no, but it's so funny because you ask Copilot, and this is a real example back in the day, like months ago, as we built technology. So we asked Copilot, I'm an Anna, how do I reserve a sales credit memo? And Copilot said, easy. To reserve a sales credit memo, you need to go to sales invoice and create a sales credit memo, and so on and so forth. And that reply sounds very convincing. It has the right English words in the right sentiment and the right kind of structure. But the truth is, it's absolutely like non-existent statement. We don't have any way to reverse sales credit memos from sales invoices. You need to do it differently. So Copilot reply with something sounds very convincing, but it's absolutely fabricated. It's not grounded, just basically put English words in some sentence. And why it's doing like that? Because if you look on our documentation, we can tell you how to create a sales credit memo from sales invoice. We can show you how to create purchase credit memo from purchase order. And all those sentences or instructions look very similar, and they're good, and they're truthful. However, on this data set, it's very easy to create something which sounds similar and absolutely has nothing to do with the reality. So again, back in the day, Copilot could hallucinate. With the work we're doing right now, it'll obviously give you a very different reply compared to a couple of months ago. Let's take another example. Here's a question. How do I release a sales order? And here's an answer. I can help you with that. Navigate to home group on sales order page and press release action to release sales order. How many of you think it's the right answer for a question? I don't know.
That's a few hands.
I don't know, like one more time. How many of you believe that this is the right answer for a question, how to release a sales order? Are you guys working with Business Central, by the way? When was the last time you opened a UI? So the funny part, yes, it's the right answer. However, it's absolutely not grounded because in our documentation, back in the day, we have zero instruction how to release a sales order. One more time. We ask Copilot a question, which sounds absolutely innocent. It comes up with the right response, but not because we have enough source to justify it, just because, again, on many other pages, we have a group which is called home group. And in this home group, we have a button called release. So it kind of hallucinates. And in this case, it was the right guess. But again, it's absolutely ungrounded. And just want to share some of the examples of stuff we have to deal with. Now, the question is, what does the machinery to make sure those fabrications not happening in real life? So imagine we have a question. How can I do something? The first thing we're going to do, we're going to acquire a knowledge. And it's very interesting to think about that. What does real knowledge means? The knowledge means something trustful, which we can trust as a Microsoft. And in our case, we use for Microsoft Learn source is our documentation. So we're trying to understand from our documentation, can we even answer that question? And there is some small borderline. Obviously, security is involved, and so on and so forth. But if we can answer this question, we're also trying to understand, once you get a result from a large language model, does this answer really answer the question which was asked? So we have a number of steps to verify before we provide any data back to the users. So it's not like we're sending some initial reply back. If we can help, we give you a great instruction. If we cannot help, let's say we don't know how to answer a question, we'll send you some links where You might find answer yourself, but we'll never pretend that we really know what to do in case we don't have any factual grounds to support that case. So here's a better example. If Harina asks, how do I extend the trial? Copilot say, hey, in order for you to extend the trial, you do step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, and those steps are grounded, meaning we have a clear documentation, we're described very well, it can be multiple sources. So in case we have a knowledge, and we know it's trustful, we can help you with a question. If you ask how to release a sales order, we will say, we don't really know exactly how to do it, because we don't have data for it. However, we can give you a number of links where you can go ahead and maybe educate yourself. Again, we don't pretend that you have knowledge, but we try to help as much as we can when you work with a different knowledge bases. Okay, now we're going to continue our conversation. What about working with data? Because it's become a little bit more tricky at this point of time.
Yeah, I need the slide. Yeah, so here's an example question where the user is asking for some data, right? So they have asked, is there any inventory for the item with the ID 1906S, but they just said 1906S. And so in this case, Copilot replied, and this is a real scenario again that we encountered while we were building Copilot Chat. Yes, I found 5 1906S in stock, and then here's a link to this item. But then when the user goes to click this link, they actually get an error because that item doesn't exist. And the problem in this scenario was that we weren't able to find any records that matched what you asked for, but the LLM just came up with an answer anyway, and it came up with a link that it was valid enough that you could click it and it would take you to Business Central, but the actual record ID and the bookmark don't exist. And so when you go to look at it, you just get an error saying, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, basically. So how do we ensure that you get reliable answers when you're searching for data? And so, if you ask a question where you give us all the information that we need to answer the question, you just say, find the most recently posted sales invoice. And so you've told us that you're looking for sales invoices, and you've told us exactly what kind of filter you want to apply. It's a very unambiguous request. And so in this case, we need to figure out what kind of data that is. So we look at the request, and we grab all of the tables from the metadata, and then we pass all of that information to the LLM. So we know what data is installed, whether that comes from the base app or from your extensions. And we've extracted the entity that you're talking about from the request so that we can check against all those pages, like which table are we talking about. So if that was successful, then perhaps in this instance we found the sales header table. And so now we need to apply some filters and sorting that will retrieve the most recently posted sales invoice. And so again, we'll go to the LLM to generate these filters, and we'll probably do some kind of sorting on the posting date and also check whether the status is that it was posted or released. So then finally, once we've come up with those filters and they check out, then we need to go and retrieve some records from the database. And then we can give you back those records, and that's the result that you see in the chat today. So this is like the sunshine scenario where the user asks us for something that we can easily deliver because you gave us all the information and it was a very simple request. But what if the user asks something like, find the overdue balance for a datum? And if you've ever used the demo data, you signed up for a trial and checked that out, then you probably know that a datum is a customer, but the LLM doesn't know that a datum is a customer. The LLM has no idea what you're talking about, right? You didn't specify that it was a customer. And so in this case, we would go through this whole path and figure out, I have no idea. A datum doesn't match up with any of my tables. A datum doesn't match any of my data types. So instead, we'll use the existing searching company data function. And so this is an example of, you tried to do something with AI, but unfortunately it didn't work. But in this case, you can just fall back to existing programmatic methods, right? We have the searching company data that looks at the most commonly used tables. And in that case, it will search and find a datum in the customer table. And then it's going to send you back, this is the search result that we found. But if it can't find a record, obviously, there's been a failure, right? And this is what happened in the previous scenario that I talked about, where it searched for 1906, it didn't find anything, but it hallucinated. And actually, it could fail at any of these stages. Maybe we can't figure out what the data type is because you've mentioned multiple, or you didn't mention it at all. Maybe we couldn't come up with any filters because there's not enough fields on the page that can satisfy that request. Or maybe we failed to retrieve the records because we were able to figure everything out, but you don't actually have any posted sales invoices, or there aren't any items in stock with that description. And so in those cases, we actually need to say to the LLM, we couldn't find any results. You need to specifically, you can't just give it the empty query object. You need to give it back an explanation. Please apologize to the user and say, say that we couldn't find that, right, to avoid this previous scenario. So in this case, we're trying as hard as we can to satisfy the request, but when we can't, we need to know that we can't and accept that, because then the answers are more reliable, they're more trustworthy, it's much safer for the user to trust that information. And we're building trust with the users in this way, right? So here's another type of question that you could ask for data. You might ask, who is my top customer? And so Copilot is going to follow the same path as before, right? It understands that it needs to open the customer list, and it also tries to apply sorting and filters to satisfy the request. But unfortunately, this query is a little bit ambiguous, right? What does the top customer actually mean? So Copilot is just going to infer the meaning of top from the available fields. So it sees a field called sales, like local currency, and it thinks it doesn't need to apply a filter. I can just sort by sales and take the top one, right? And so then it's going to retrieve records from the database and write the response. Your top customer is a datum, and they have a sales balance of $53,000, right? So how does the user know that it actually returned what you wanted, right? Maybe my definition of as the user of what my top customer is like whether we play a lot of golf together or something, right? What actually is the metric that defines your top customer? And so the way that we handle this is we will explain to you why we made this decision, right? So Copilot generates the answer, but it also generates the explanation as to why it picked that record in the first place. So in this case, you can see it's telling you that it's sorted by the sales field in descend in order to find the top customer, right? And we've defined your top customer as the one with the most sales. And so this way, the user can verify the answer that we gave, you know where it came from, and then you can act on that information in your own business. Yeah. So in summary, Copilot, when it's finding data, is able to retrieve records by sorting and applying filters, so it can answer questions like, do I have tables or chairs in stock? Because you said, I'm looking for tables or chairs items. Show me the latest sales invoice for a datum. Show me all my customers from Germany. And in those cases, you gave us all the information we needed. But it can also search across company data to retrieve named records. So for if you just say, find information about a datum, I know I need to find Alpine, but I don't know what it is. Can you find it for me? And I'm looking for ID 100,000. It can figure that out for you, right? Somebody told you to find that record, and you don't need to go back and ask them. You can just ask Copilot. So one thing to remember with this is that if users struggle to navigate your UX, then Copilot will struggle to navigate it too. So Copilot can see the product via the metadata the same way that the user can see the fields and columns on the page. And so you need to make sure that all of the information to satisfy common user requests is on the page, is in the page metadata, so that when we pass that page metadata to Copilot, Copilot can see, I can sort by sales, I can extract the contact information from the customer, that sort of thing, right? So make sure you include all of the information that would help Copilot fulfill common requests about your extensions. And speaking of extensions, Ievgenii is going to talk about how extensions integrate with Copilot Chat.
So let's back to our keynote demo from yesterday. I have an extension built by me as a developer, not Microsoft. And I installed that environment. It's about rewards for our customers. I ask, show me customers with gold rewards. So one is the feedback we are saying, hey, can't you just go to customer list, filter it yourself? Well, if I know where to go, I can. But if I don't know to, I'm just looking on a call, find some data. I don't know those pages. Maybe I am a very light user. That's why Copilot really, really helps to save me those clicks. In this case, it comes up with a couple of records. And of course, it explains, and if you click a link, it will show you the page, and you can clearly understand how that logic was applied. So you ask for a gold customer, and in this case, it just tends to go to customer page because there is a field called reward, find and list it. But you can think about show me my important orders, show me latest delayed cases. Like things which may be not that obvious how to find. That's where Copilot really, really helps with your extensions for your users. However, the question is, what does it take us to build that? The way how we think about that is exactly what Ayrton is saying, that if we as a community don't do enough job to describe your extensions, your fields, your actions, what it's about, it's really hard to expect Copilot, actually, like every human being, to work with that product, data, or structure. So in this case, as a developer, it just takes me a bit of extra craft to describe my fields with the tooltips, add them to the proper pages, add them to the list, and then the machinery is aware about the metadata, it's aware about those fields, about those extensions, and now Copilot can really work. One of the feedback we are getting from our early adopters, hey, I tried to use your guys' Copilot, but it doesn't really work with my extension. Sure, because you have a field 1015, which means for you currency, and for us it's like how do you expect us to work with that if we cannot really understand what is it about? There was another poll question we asked, can chat answer questions about data in your extension? And the answer is yes, as long as it's well described. And we can answer those questions, yeah, we can really help with the job. If you ask a question about chat, show me my sales by months for the last 5 years, if there is no place in application even to answer that question, Copilot cannot help for now. If you expect any maybe reports, we can help either. But for questions where you can ask your colleague to go ahead with the product, find it, present, Copilot should be able to help as well. Right now, just for information, we don't really give you any way to extend chat, maybe with a SL developer. But again, as long as you describe your applications, not like properly, but better, there is a high chances Copilot will help your users with your solutions. Every time we think about Copilot work for now and in the future, we try to follow this principle that meaningful descriptions are essential for humans, like me and Ayrton, and for AI, LLM features, Copilots, to understand the application. So as long as it's meaningfully described, we can do a good job to understand and work with this data, and we need your help to get this done. There are a number of things which Copilot cannot do today, and actually users' expectations are super high. Like technology is all around, you can expect it, ask any question and get an answer, and unfortunately, we're not there yet. If you have some very complex data aggregation questions, we can't help you necessarily now. For example, show me aggregate sales by all the customers and countries. For that type of question, we have an amazing feature called Analysis Assist, which can also, you can use that Copilot, you can ask it natural question, maybe we can help with that, but not from our chat yet. Like a short summary of what we discussed, we try to be grounded in the real data, so you can trust if you get the results, and you can take an actions based on that. And we do work invisible for you. We sometimes take some extra times to figure out that it's really what you can rely and use. And we try to provide you back a lot of instructions. Also, as we would like you to provide your users instruction and conversation, so we can answer the question to best of our ability. And as Ayrton mentioned, if you're not sure, you can always see and understand, hey, that's how we got a reply. Maybe I need to ask another question. Show me who owes us money, meaning show me customers who maybe have some outstanding balance. And with that question, we can give you a more reliable response. It's paramount important you give us feedback. Every time you make sum up or sum down, we get notification in the backend, so we can go ahead and improve your queries. And with that, we have some time for Q&A. We hope it's an interesting conversation and topic. We have around 10 minutes before you go to the next conversation. So let's just do that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're out of T-shirts, but I'm still going to throw the box anyway. I saw you first, so good luck. Oh, sorry. Brilliant.
Thank you. You hear me? Yeah. Okay. You made the example that I can ask Copilot a question, and as long as my colleague can give me the answer, Copilot should do this as well. Does it include permission sets into the answers? So if my colleague has access and I'm not, I would expect I don't get the answer.
Yeah, so when we queried the metadata
Can you rephrase the
to
question?
find... yeah, sorry, so the question was, does Copilot chat respect your permissions, right? So, like if my colleague should be able to give me the answer, Copilot should be able to give me the answer too, but obviously my colleague has permissions applied so that he can't access every single thing in Business Central. He can only see his own personal view of the data in your company. And so, yes, Copilot respects the user's permissions, right? So when the user asks a question, they can only ask questions, like Copilot's only going to recognize named entities like sales invoices, customers, that the user has permission to even see the metadata for, and that's the list that we'll pass to the LLM. And then when they actually request the data, we also use like your table permissions and things like this to limit the data that you can access. So you can't use Copilot to like circumvent the permissions.
And find your manager's salary.
Exactly, right? You should only be able to see things with Copilot chat that you can see via the UI already. Yeah.
The same mindset, if you in UI can find this data, then Copilot, as you, can hopefully answer the same data questions with the same permissions as you have as a user.
Oh, okay. We had a practice with this before the session, and we all sucked. Yep.
So since the inputs and outputs to the AI are customer data, how do you guys actually use that feedback, the thumbs up, thumbs down, to improve the experience? And how do we, as extension developers, use that feedback to improve our own Copilot features?
Yes, so we do collect the fact that you gave a thumbs up and a thumbs down in telemetry, but at the moment we're not actually capturing the outputs. We're working on solutions to this internally, but what you will notice is if you give a thumbs up, it's just going to say, like, I don't want to click that one yet. If you give a thumbs up, it's going to say, like, thanks for the feedback, and we've received the fact that this was positive. And we can see, like, the distribution. If you're asking for information, we can see the distribution that was, like, positive feedback or negative feedback. And so we have somewhat of an idea of how like well received the feature is. But if you give us a thumbs down, you can actually choose categories of response. So you can say like, you know, the information was inaccurate, it was offensive, or like some other response. And we are also working on adding a free text field to this, where we're going to capture that data, right? Because you know, like with the feedback form, the user's actually consenting to providing this information when they press submit. And so we actually are able to put that box in, and it will come down the line. Yeah.
To us. Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, behind. Yeah.
Thank you. I noticed that in this example with extension, I do not see the filters that was applied to receive the reply. Is it like will be like in all cases?
Sorry, like the example that was on the screen now?
This example,
this
yeah.
one, okay.
In previous example, it said there was filtering by description or sales LCY, but here in this example, I do not see this in the Copilot window. Yeah.
It's there, if you just expand this.
Ah,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
thank
exactly.
you.
So if you hover over the citations or you expand the references at the bottom, then you will see the explanation, right? We don't want to take up too much of the screen, but it is there.
The main problem we're trying to solve, if he'll tell you, here's the gold customer, here's the top sales, how do you know? How do you know? Like, exactly. No, like if I ask you what is the sales, you're like, it's like $100. Like, how do you, like, you cannot trust if you don't know what 100 means. The way for us to demystify magic, saying, hey, this 3 means from this page with these filters. And that's how you see that what system tells you exactly what you experience. It might be not what you're looking for, you change your question. But we wouldn't say like, you know, it's number 24 or 42, and then God knows what.
Yes, I think it's very helpful to have.
Yeah, because if you cannot explain to yourself why, how can you, communicate to someone else? It's really, really hard. And this is not about Business Central. Yeah, it's a Microsoft principle. You want to demystify that answer in a proper way so you can really trust. And that's the easiest way. Just show you how we calculate that, if we can.
Yeah, it's right behind you.
We are a Dutch company, so I'm curious how it will work with the translations. So in case we have our own translations in English and in Dutch.
Yeah, great question. So the question is, it's all in English, but how would it work with translations, multiple languages? Also maybe if you search for master data, now it's in different languages. You know, if you're in Denmark, everything's like your item price list will be in Danish, obviously not in English, or whatever country is. So right now, as of today, we're in a preview in English only, English languages for now. And I think it's fair to say we're in a path to open up it for multiple languages. In fact, all our immersive features, everything you've seen from our keynote, when you have prompt dialects in the product, like sales line suggestions, all those features are available in all multiple languages with 24.2 release. So it's not English only anymore. So you can type in Danish, in English, in French, in Italian, in Spain, in Sweden, in Japanese, and so on and so forth. But the chat for now is in English because we need to figure out some stuff. But we're on a path to expand more languages as we go.
Thank you.
I have another question. So I saw in your screenshots that you have a page with a tooltip and a table with a tooltip. So you've added the multi-language tooltip on the table. So I was wondering, do you fetch the table tooltip for the pages? Because your screenshots it looks like you have to do it on both, and that's what you do not want.
Yeah. So the great question was, what do you really use metadata to find your objects? And we show you example of the tooltips. It just was for illustrational purposes. We use all the metadata we can find, but if we have nothing, we cannot help. The point was, if you define, then it's on us to find whatever we have. Tooltips, descriptions, like whatever we have, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
So
as
if
long
we
as you
start
describe
using it on the table, then it's fine. We don't have to do it on the page because it's inherited.
Ideally, it should be for us sufficient, but so as long as you define well, we should be able to do a good job to find it. Right now, I think we're looking for the pages, but it's something we Microsoft just need to optimize. It's not really on you.
Yeah, well, so the thing is, we're taking the caption that you write on the table, right? I think we got this question earlier in the session this morning. Like, if you build your extension and you only have a localized version, there isn't an English version, then yeah, we're going to send those localized captions to the LLM. And it's up to you to check, like, how does Copilot Chat perform with your extension? Because in our experience, like, if you start passing foreign language captions, it actually does work fine, but you should definitely, like, double check this and, you know, see if the quality is there. And if not, consider having a like backup English captions if that's possible somehow.
Just to be clear, you can also go ahead and type nouns in Spanish. We're just saying that we believe it will work in English, but it's not like we prohibit you to use different languages.
Yeah, that's over to the right hand side.
I have a question. So is it only tooltips and field descriptions as a source of, I don't know, Copilot learning to answer some questions, or can we somehow feed it with additional documentation like user guides, manuals, and so on? If no, is it planned to be in the future?
Yeah, so we had this slide before.
Can you rephrase the question, maybe?
Yeah, so, okay, sorry. So the question was, is it only taking the information about the fields from the metadata, or can we also include like additional documentation, like if you have your own documentation hosted online? And at the moment, no, it's only from the metadata. So all of the information Copilot sees is the structure of the page, the fields that are there, the about text, like tooltips, descriptions, captions, that sort of thing, right? So you need to make sure that you fully describe your application in terms of the metadata. At the moment, we only source external information from Microsoft Learn, not from third-party documentation. Yeah.
As of now, if you're nice, you cannot yet bring your description of your extension or your product because your user will ask how to do this with your solution. We don't have it right now. It's obviously obvious thing to fulfill. We are on a path, but as of now, it's look for Microsoft documentation, the sources we can trust, just to start with it. But it's an excellent question.
I think we probably have time for one more.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Okay, maybe we got them all. If you have any more questions, you can obviously come and find us after the talk. But thanks, everybody, for attending and for all the questions. They were great. Yeah. Thanks again.